Greetings, greetings. Once again, we're with you here to talk about Reconstruction and Jim Crow, and today we're going to be talking about Jim Crow laws. Yes, indeed, the Jim Crow laws. This is how you can see that the Jim Crow policies of segregation were actually carried out and how they affected people. Now, this video is being recorded at a different location, so to invite our guest in, we're going to have to gather them in a different way. So hold on. Get rid of that. And we're going to invite our guest in. And here's our guest for today. This is Sally. We can see the maniacal look on Sally's face, and you watch her jump at you. Rawr, rawr. Yeah. That's a real nice sound to hear at about 4:12 in the morning, and you can see the look on this guest's face that if she wants to go out at 4:12 in the morning, she is not going to shut up. So you've got to get up and let her out because, well, you can't tell a husky anything. All right, let's get back to what we're actually here for. Jim Crow laws. And you say the definition. Well, the basic definition of Jim Crow laws, state and local, as in like towns, in the United States that were put into force, enacted between 1876 and roughly 1965. What they did is they mandated, that means required, segregation in all public facilities. What is a public facility? Well, a restaurant, a bathroom, a drinking fountain, a public pool, those type of things. Now, supposedly during this Jim Crow segregation time, there were separate but equal facilities for African Americans. But we all know that doesn't really work. And what it did do, as you see there in bold, is it did lead to African Americans not being treated equally in a number of different ways. Now, you could pause it and look at that website. No, I have not made this a link active from the video, but you can look at the website and that will take you to more information, more specific information on Jim Crow. But here are some visual representations because pictures of things always help you understand more. You can see some of the ways that it was acted out in restrooms, in drinking fountains, and down here, this is interesting, even in a ticket to a baseball game. So that was also segregated there. And you see at the top there where it was not just African Americans that were segregated, it was people of Spanish descent as well. So it was wider than what you might think as far as how it affected. Now, in front of you, you see, again, as it says, a sampling of Jim Crow laws from various states. At the end of each one, it tells you the state it's from. These ones are from Alabama. But you can see the areas: nurses, buses, railroads, restaurants. So basically, in Alabama at one time, there was a law that said, well, you see what it says there. White female nurses can't nurse in wards that have African American men. Pool rooms, toilet facilities, intermarriage, cohabitation, education, and the one that I have always thought was the strangest is burial. They had segregated graveyards. Here's some pictures of what this segregation looked like. It's the white water fountain on the left that has refrigeration so the water is cool, and the African American one on the right is simply a sink that does not have refrigeration. Not equal. And this is an African American schoolroom. No, not from the 1800s, from 1950. Do you think those were equal to what the white children had? Here's a protest march. Now, this is symbolic. It says, "Here lies Jim Crow." Now, there's not actually a person inside that casket. But this is a protest march against Jim Crow. And their message was, I bet you could guess, I'm not going to say it right away. What did they want to happen to Jim Crow? And here's a picture that was taken during the Great Depression. And it's really kind of funny because in the background you see this white family in a car. There's no way like the American way. But in this line, a bread line, people standing in line to get free food when a lot of people were hungry, white and black, look at all the people. They're all African American. So even people standing in line to get food handouts, whether they be white or black, they were split apart in some parts of the country during that time period. Here you say a bus waiting line or a bus waiting area, and you see two doors. Colored waiting room, colored men. This is a bathroom, so there was a separate bathroom for African American men and a separate waiting room for the bus for African American men. And there's probably a reason these men are not sitting inside the waiting room that was segregated. And you can look on the face of this guy right here. Doesn't look like he likes being photographed. Doesn't look like he likes being treated like this. So it's kind of like they are not cooperating with the segregation. They're not fighting anyone, but they're also not cooperating with it by going into that area where they were limited. They're just standing outside. They'd rather stand outside than go into the waiting room and be treated unequally. Movie theater. You can place it in time by looking at the movie that was being advertised, Tarzan. And it says Rex Theater for colored people. Colored people is another phrase used to represent African Americans. Now we're going to go look to see exactly where were there Jim Crow laws. So we're going to go to a program, and you see the United States. You've seen this before. And we're going to do some searching on different types of Jim Crow laws. And the first one we're going to do is just basic Jim Crow laws. Total Jim Crow laws. Try that again. Total Jim Crow laws greater than or equal to 1. So you see there, every state in the Union except for Hawaii, Iowa, Michigan, and Vermont had at least one Jim Crow law of some sort. Now let's do a little bit higher selection. Let's say 5 Jim Crow laws, greater than or equal to 5 Jim Crow laws. There you go. So most of it, there's like the solid South, but there's also some out west. If there weren't a lot of African Americans out in the West, I wonder who they were indeed discriminated against. Excuse me. All right, let's do another type of search. First, we'll clear, and then we'll go and we'll search again. And let's see. Let's do a search on education Jim Crow laws, greater than or equal to 1. That means they had at least one segregation law about Jim Crow things specifically on education. And there you go. So it's kind of like the southern half of the country, with some of the states in the north not having those kind of laws. It's just interesting that it wasn't just in the South in some of this. Okay, let's do another search. Searching by attributes, we'll clear that. And we will go to transportation. Yeah, transportation. Transportation greater than or equal to 1, meaning these states that show up in yellow will have at least one Jim Crow law about transportation, like buses and trains. Oh, isn't that interesting? There were Jim Crow laws of one type or another in other areas of the country, but as far as transportation, as in buses and trains, it was pretty much just in the South. And going back, we're going to do maybe 1 or 2 more searches. Public accommodations like restaurants and things like that. Public accommodations greater than or equal to 1. Okay, up there you go. Again, mostly the South. So again, you can make the case, except for Florida. Isn't that interesting? You can make the case that a lot of these Jim Crow laws were in the South, but not all of them. Oh, and one last thing. This thing is probably the most disturbing one, is the lynching. The lynching as in the horrifically brutal murdering of African American people. Those states had at least one lynching, basically a murder based on race and nothing other than race. Let's do that again. Lynching is greater than or equal to 5. So still some in the north. I believe that's Wyoming, Nebraska, Kansas, yeah. But still, let's step it up and do one last search before we call an end to our effort here. So we will go, again, lynchings greater than or equal to 100. That means that in the states that show up in yellow, there was at least 100 murders based on race. And that does indeed tell you a story, does it not? So, Let me see if I can show you one more interesting thing here. Attribute table. Oh, this will be interesting. We're going to search with the highest numbers at the top. Okay. So if you look at this column here, this gives you some statistics. Mississippi, during this time period, and I cannot tell you the years they gathered this data for, Mississippi had 539 lynchings. Georgia had 492. All of those states that have 100 or more, which is what we searched on, are in the South. Virginia, the state where we are sitting right now, doesn't mean you can't watch this video not being from Virginia, is 83. So, Jim Crow laws were acted out in various ways. So, thank you for listening. Take the formative assessment, do a good job on it, and then move on to the last module, which is the summary. You're almost time for the e-cart test. Goodbye.